Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all for attending this very special event co-organized by the Hong Kong Institute of Landscape Architects, Civic Exchange, and the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. So today we are very honored to have Professor Christine Low here with us today to share with us about the Hong Kong's Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan and its way forward. So Professor Low has chaired the Hong Kong Biodiversity Expert Group, which consists of over 120 members, experts from the academia, NGOs, and the business sector. And together they have submitted 75 recommendations to the government on biodiversity conservation. So we're really happy to have her here today. And this BSAP, Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan, and the government's updating of this plan is very relevant to landscape architects and practitioners, and actually everyone who cares about the environment, who cares about safeguarding the biodiversity of Hong Kong. So we really look forward to today's presentation and active discussions later. So, but to begin this event, may we first invite everyone to take a group photo. So you can just stay in your seat and our photographer will be here. Yeah. Thank you. So first, may we invite Mr. Paul Chan, President of the Hong Kong Institute of Landscape Architects, to give us an introduction. Paul, please.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for Professor Christine Low and Kitty on behalf of Civic Exchange of organizing this very important event, and also for Hong Kong Maritime Museum offering this beautiful venue on the seaside. It's a great privilege to be here seeing you all on this important event, because we're going to have a BSAP update this year. And the consultation period is currently open and until 11th of July. So I think our institute is likely going to write a response on that too. So it's important that we have this exchange session today. So I myself, as Stephanie introduced, I'm the current president of Hong Kong ILA. Currently I'm also chairing a working group in what we call the International Federation of Landscape Architects, Asia Pacific region on climate change and biodiversity. So I'm going to share a little bit of background and the works that we've been doing in the past. So the background is UN Convention on Biodiversity, the CBD, is where China is a party to since 1993. And the coverage extended to the Hong Kong SAR in 2011. So the CBD adopted in COP15, which happened in 2022, the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the KMGBF, with 2 overarching goals and 23 targets. And the 2 overarching goals are halting of global biodiversity loss by 2030 and achieving harmony between human and nature by 2050. So this is a planet boundaries framework from Stockholm, where it lists out the things that the global Earth system are operating and the threshold of them. So you see, actually biosphere integrity is one of the earliest that has gone beyond the threshold, even earlier than climate change, i.e. the CO2 intensity. So the integrity or biosphere is at stake, and it's starting to, any of this threshold being gone beyond, it's effectively destabilizing the planet's resilience and stability. So in COP16, I had the chance to attend last year, and that's actually where I met Kitty, and she was very, very hardworking. She run around different venues where I just sit on one venue most of the time. And alongside with the main event in the blue zone, there was also a side event in the green zone, where IFLA, the International Federation of Landscape Architects, alongside with many other international organizations, jointly hosted the Biopolis 2024, which is like a joint effort with all these international organizations relevant to the built environment, such as the Green, World Green Infrastructure Network, so and so forth, work together on how we could facilitate, expedite the process of, in a wider scale, on biodiversity. So we also had a manifesto during the event. IFLA has, apart from the Asia Pacific regions that I'm currently serving, each region has a representative, and then there are two chairs in the world level of working group on biodiversity and climate change. They have done very good works, and last year they published what they call Works with Nature. I wasn't involved in that, so I have no credit on that. It's mainly by the two chairmen, Kocha Kong and also Pamela Conrad from America and Thailand. And they published that and presented in COP29 last year. And the good thing about that is in the past, many other institutes in landscape architecture, they have established guidelines, position statements, so on and so forth. But then this Works with Nature publication actually include a lot of case studies, because when it comes to nature, sometimes it's not easy to replicate. It's not like a guideline which you can just adopt in different places, different cities. So that's why the cases are important, and that serves as a very good reference. So back to Hong Kong, we have strived to do more collaboration across different sectors. One example was the collaboration with WWF Hong Kong in serving we came up with an alternative proposal on Santin Technopole, which is a 300-hectare development very close to the Ramsar site Mai Po. So basically what we did was a number of recommendations, including the water body integrity, adoption of nature-based solution, agricultural landscape, so on and so forth, bird flights, etc. And the thing is, we try not to interfere too much with the development parameters. So this alternative proposal we presented in the town planning board, and at the end of the day, there was a list of requirements set out by the town planning board to be included in what they call the upcoming planning and design guide alongside with it. And basically all our recommendation is one way or the other incorporated in those recommendations. The other thing that we are looking at is the urban area of Hong Kong. Because we have 60% of our land area are one way or the other protected by way of country parks or other means, which of course we are proud of, but at the same time we have urban area and open space that we believe warrant better look at in terms of biodiversity. So we have approximately 1,930 hectares of open space zone in our urban area. Out of the guideline of one person have 2 or 2.5 in the latest guideline of meter square of open space. But as you can see, many of them are either not developed, or even if they're developed, they are predominantly for recreation, but no biodiversity. And even if they're vegetated, some of them are kind of monoculture and so So we were thinking if we can adopt what we call mini forest kind of environment in the urban area, because Hong Kong is actually in a region where we could have forests. Okay, we are kind of a broadleaf tree forest region. So, but of course we don't have really big kind of regional open space. We have many small patches of open space. So we are thinking, can we do better with those little patches of open space? So we thought about mini forests adopting what we call the Miyawaki method, where we have a large number of native species, of diverse species, planted densely together in a small patch of land where they're fast growing, high performance in carbon and biodiversity, and then in the long run, lower maintenance. So after some time of application, the CEDD supported the idea, and they offer a piece of land within the Northern Metropolis area in Fanning North, and another one near Long Valley to do the pilot. So it was planted in February, and what we are going to do, so it's now five months old for us. So what we're going to do is for the coming 3 years to evaluate, the measure, monitor the performance and biodiversity. And hopefully, with that in mind, we can inform others, like departments or even private sector, to do something like that. In terms of collaboration, we also had the international conference held this March, where we had, I think, 12 representatives from 12 different countries and region in Asia Pacific region coming to Hong Kong in exchange on the topics. We also had the honor of Christine and Kitty as our moderator for some of the sessions. And during the event, we also signed MOUs with 2 organizations, WWF Hong Kong and Kaduri Farm Botanic Garden. And part of the, apart from education and so on, a part of the collaboration with KFBG is about native species, the provision. So how we could, if we are going to advocate for more urban forests, native species, in Hong Kong there are actually no commercial nurseries, and it's very hard to find sufficient native species seedlings and so on. So during the mini forest we did with CDD, all the seedlings came from KFBG. But if we are successful in advocating the idea, many people doing it, there is not sufficient supply. So how can we work together on that? And similarly for WWF Hong Kong, I think we were quite successful, quite fruitful in terms of the collaboration on Santine. So for the other NDAs, there's a lot more coming up in the Northern Metropolis, so we can continue that model working together. So for upcoming works, now the Santine Temple Hall, the planning and design brief is being prepared now. So we are closely following up on that and see how the recommendation we made could be effectively implemented. CEDD is also establishing the first MBS guide for Hong Kong, which is very encouraging because it's not only like a single project, it will apply to other projects as well. And in fact, Hong Kong will probably, if this is going to be published this year, it will be the first city in China to have an MBS guide citywide. And also in North Metropolis, they are planning, the government is planning to establish what they call the wetland conservation park system of over 1,000 hectares. And we are also looking at this with reference to all the wetland parks around us. There are actually many of them in Guangdong province. I visited one in Malaysia, this is one of them. We are looking at not just the planning, but also the construction and all the way, and particularly on the management, because the scale of these wetland parks will be larger than anything that the government has done before. So they are also thinking of how they could manage these wetland parks. So we are looking at the kind of interesting like co-management kind of model in other cities. and how they can work in Hong Kong. The last thing is very new because last month I was in Malaysia attending their annual award event, which this is what they call the Wetland Arboretum, got the Project of the Year. So they are kind enough to bring me there and then visit the place. And then during the event, we also discussed and agreed to collaborate in working on an NBS or a nature positive guide that would apply to Asia as a whole. So this is the introduction I have for you. Thank you very much. I pass this back to Stephanie.
Thank you, Paul. So next, we will invite Ms. Kitty Tam, Program Lead of Civic Exchange, to share with us.
So good afternoon, Christine. Good afternoon, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. It's very happy to see so many interested people to join this event today. And of course, thank you HKILA for saying yes to co-organize, and also thank you HKMM Maritime Museum for giving us this beautiful venue. So I am Kitty. I'm from Civic Exchange. So today I will talk about a little bit further about COP16 and what Hong Kong can learn from the discussion back in Colombia, Cali, where I met Paul. So as you can see on this picture, this is a hummingbird. It's a bird that I saw in Cali, the city that they had the COP16 discussion. And actually, I took this picture on the same day when I met Paul. Yeah, I went because I went there for the whole period of the COP, and then it's too tiring to listen to all the events. And then one day I'm like, nah, I'm just going to look at the beautiful nature there. So I saw this hummingbird, and then I think I saw Paul in the afternoon, and actually I arrived earlier than Paul, and then I even listened to one section before Paul arrives. So this is the background story of this little bird. It's a female, by the way. It's a female, so the male looks different. So I will talk about, in the next 15 minutes, I will quickly run through what's the challenge that we're facing regarding climate and biodiversity, and then how global, what is global doing about it, and national, and then I will talk about what I do after that in Hong Kong. So I'll host COP16 forum, and then way forward. So in this slide, I propose a question for you guys to think about it. Can global biodiversity goals be met without action from cities like Hong Kong? Why Hong Kong? Why us? Why we should care? So climate change, there's only two numbers you need to remember after this slide. So it's 2.6 and 43. So 2.6 is what the whole world has committed to reduce carbon emission by 2030. So it's only 2.6% carbon reduction. However, scientists, IPCC, recommends 43% reduction if we want to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. So 2.6 and 43% is almost like 20 times, right? So we need to work 20 times harder from now on. And the UN has released a report last year and said that if we are still doing the same thing as what we're doing now, the world will reach 3.1 degrees Celsius by in 2100. And actually the newest number from the science, they say by year 2029, we will exceed the 1.5 degree goal already. So we don't have much time left. We are already in 2025, right? So 4 years. We need to work harder, 20 times more. And what's happening regarding biodiversity, so science also tells us that 1 million animal and plant species are threatened with extinction. So they will disappear, they will be gone. So for an example, in ocean, we can see wildfire in LA and everywhere, but actually there's also wildfire under the sea. So scientists also warn us that now we are experiencing the biggest coral bleaching event. So it's 84% of the world's coral reef area are being affected by climate change. And in Hong Kong, it's getting hotter. Last year, it's already 1.5 degrees Celsius hotter than usual. And we have extreme weather events. We have 3 typhoons last year in November. So it's a huge risk. But think about it positively. Hong Kong, we also have beautiful nature. Actually, we have 1/3 of China's amphibian and 1/3 of China's bird species. And then we also have 25% of China's marine species, when we are only just 0.03% of the whole China's marine area. So think about the question again, why Hong Kong? Why we should care? Because we have so many beautiful things. And by the way, the pictures are taken by a staff of Maritime Museum, Goldman. So here is some pictures I got from the AFCD consultation document. So it lists out all the numbers of species we have in Hong Kong. So you can see it's quite amazing. We have 580 types of birds. And we have dragonflies, and we also have a lot of corals. So we have a lot to do to protect these beautiful animals. So regarding COP16, so this word I think I keep talking about KMGBF. I've been talking about it since I think many years ago. So this is a global agreement signed back in COP15. So it's 2 days before my birthday. So 19th of December, 2022. So I was quite happy when I read this document, because it's actually covered a lot of things that I have advocated for so many years. So this is what agreed on globally. So they have, I think Paul already mentioned, 2030, how many years? 5 years left, nature positive, we need to achieve that. And 2050, harmony with nature. So they have a 25 action-oriented global targets. So you can see the logo of the KMGBF, I'm wearing it today. It's actually 23 different colors here. So these are all the 23 targets that is mentioned. For example, even target 1 is talking about all areas on the planet need to be under biodiversity inclusive spatial planning. So we can think about Hong Kong. On the land side, we are quite good, but in the sea side, we don't have any marine spatial planning. So maybe we can think about it, how to do it. And China. So China is actually among one of the first country to launch their national biodiversity plan. It's called NBSAP. So they also have a lot of priority action, 27 priority actions, and 75 priority projects listed out in this plan. And actually, the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area is one of the key strategic regions that we need to come up with a better biodiversity conservation plan action. So what I did in COP16, I took selfie like Paul, and I also went to around 30 events. I actually used my phone or computer to record everything, and then I upload it to AI, and then I analyze the discussion. And in the COP16, they are covering how to put money in this conservation action going forward. They also discuss the monitoring framework. And so for me, what I did is, apart from going to all the seminar, I meet important, interesting people. Like here, you can see Professor Deborah Roberts. She is one of the main writers in the IPCC AR6 report. She is actually the co-lead. And I also met some Dutch Dutch people, they are very good at nature finance in the Dutch pavilion because they have nice coffee and nice snacks. So I stayed there a lot, and then I think actually Dutch pavilion, they have the best knowledge regarding biodiversity because I went to different pavilion to have a look. So what I did is back in Hong Kong, this is in Hong Kong, I did a post COP16 forum with the help of TNC, because at that time we also had an NBS forum, right? So we have some funding. We bring people in Hong Kong. So I bring Deborah, Professor Deborah Roberts here in Hong Kong, and then also the Dutch people are at the back. So I bring everybody in. We talk about what's going on in COP16, and according to my 30 recording, I asked AI, what's the key message? So we group it into 4 different areas. So the first one is climate and nature, monitoring framework, mainstreaming biodiversity, and financing mechanism. So we had a 1-day forum to discuss all these 4 topics. So I will tell you the result later. So now I go back to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, I think on the 12th of May, the government launched this update consultation of BSEP. So they put 4 key areas. So nature conservation, deepening mainstreaming, capacity building, and collaborative partnering. So the conclusion is, we did this report, which launched on the 8th of July, to conclude what we discussed in the post-COP16 forum. And here are all the recommendations. The words are too small, so I recommend you guys to have a look later. But this report is very interesting because I capture what everybody says. So if you don't like to read words, you can just read the quotes of everybody. So for example, Paul here, he said, we may be small, but we have a role to play. And then I also make it interesting, like some information box. So you can just look at the insights to get what it means. So I highly recommend you guys to have a look. So we give recommendation based on those 4 key topics that globally is keep talking about it. Yeah, way forward, I have 5 key message to let you guys know in this report. So this is still a secret. Don't show it yet. Don't upload it. It's not published yet. So the first one we think is embed nature in city making. So nature-based solution is the way forward. And then strengthen monitoring and accountability. So if we don't know what's out there, how can we know if we are doing good or bad? So we need to monitor, we need to know data. So third one is mobilize and align finance. If we don't have money, we can't do anything. So we need to think about how to fund all these amazing projects. And then we have to empower young people, like our photographer Charlie here. She's also from Civic Change. And we also need to think about regional and global collaboration. So I'm very happy to hear Paul talk about all the work that you guys are doing globally. Bring it back to Hong Kong. And nature-based solution. So just some quick talk. Since I have a lot of audience here, so I will just do some promotion. So in Tuesday this week, we actually launched another report talking about nature-based solution with TNC. You can see Lulu here. So here are some of our recommendations for the Northern Metropolis if we want to have a nature-based solution in Hong Kong, what it means. So the key takeaway is that just project by project is not enough. We need to think big, like a multi-level landscape network approach. So think about we have to do everything everywhere because 20 times more, right? Remember, 2.6 and 43%. We need to do more. So here are some recommendations. I will not go through it, just read the report. It's 200 pages. So that's it from Civic Exchange. So now I will jump and become wear the head of HKBEG. So Hong Kong Biodiversity Expert Group chaired by Christine. So it's with 120 experts from all these organizations, and then we came up with a plan with 70-something recommendation back last year, November. So you can see Christine here. So all the experts discussing what's next for Hong Kong. This HKBEG, we have 14 focus groups talking about all these different topics. For example, education, nature-based solution, endangered species, people, culture, and biodiversity, all this. And then all came up with 70-something recommendations. So here are the 5 priority areas. And then maybe I will just let Christine to talk about it later in the discussion. So you can see I will just maybe highlight this one, restoration. So we really need to think how do we do restoration? Like is a pocket park good? Maybe we can even think about a network of pocket parks. And then here you can see marine. So as I mentioned, 5% of Hong Kong's ocean is protected. So maybe we can think about how to do better in the sea. And here is about the endangered species. How can we make sure that the animals, they don't disappear? How can we make sure they will still be there? And then we have to mainstream. So you guys, I know that you guys some architecture, some landscape architect. So I think everybody should think, what can you do in the daily life? Even when you print a paper, you can think that actually paper is from forest, right? So you can just think, you have to mainstream it. And then the last one is wildlife trade. So maybe we need to think when we eat seafood, what kind of fish we shouldn't eat, right? That kind of thing. So yeah, that's it from me. So I will pass it back to Stefan.
Thank you, Christine. So without further ado, may we invite Professor Christine Low. Let's give another round of applause to Professor Low.
Actually, if you don't remember anything, what I want to impress upon you today is how we can do better projects in Hong Kong. I think that's what we all want to do. That's what professionals want to do, and we totally have the capability of doing better projects. So that's the topic of my talk. And how do we do better projects? So what I'd like to share with you today is I believe we can do better projects in Hong Kong through collaboration. So maybe before I go into some specific ideas, let me just share with you about my journey in collaboration. And it's actually led me to what I'd like to share with you today. So this expert group, this 170 people, pretty much all the green and ecology and nature groups are amongst us. How did we really come about? And Kitty has already explained, we've had many smaller groups discussion. People actually came. It was an active thing, not just send us an email. We had several rounds of very active discussion. The point I want to make here is we are able to come together. We're able, the 74 recommendations, relatively easy. If I ask you all to kind of give me some ideas, I'm sure we can come up with 74 recommendations. But it's not just the 74 recommendations. It's actually the 5 priority areas. So this is an illustration. What we managed to do through many months of discussion is all these various groups, some very particular, they're looking at sort of birds or insects or education, and then you have the TNCs, the WWF of the world, right? So much wider global perspective. How do you agree to having 5 things? Now, the 5 things are important because what we said to ourselves is, can we try to lift ourselves from our daily expertise and silos? And for all of us, and this really is the thinking group, the knowledge and the thinking group on biodiversity, could we agree on what we think are a limited number of priorities? Otherwise, no one would remember them. And government would just say, you're just telling me to do 5,000 things. So we were able to agree to 5 priorities. And I want to specifically point you to number 2 as an illustration. What this big group wanted to share with government is, please give priority to the marine side. Because actually much more has been done on the terrestrial side. And I find this collaborative way of working to be very inspirational because it is an opportunity for us to step back from our daily interest, our daily work, and lift ourselves up. And this process actually has made me see how we might able to do projects better, how we might collaborate with more people in maybe a deeper way. And we're able to do this because of trust. We were able to lift ourselves from the minutiae of what we're doing through mutual trust. It doesn't mean the individuals' organizations cannot put forward their own individual recommendations, which they all are, but as the kind of active brain trust in Hong Kong on nature conservation, we wanted to impress on the government these two key things. Now, very few people talk about this last bit here, which is to do with wildlife crime. But to be honest, Hong Kong is the center for trafficking. So I won't go into that unless you're interested. I want to stick to the issue today of how we collaborate. So as I said, my first point is, can we use collaboration to do better projects? Okay, then my next point is, how do we do better projects? And Paul, you've already kind of explained to us, you can collaborate with WWF, and what you're trying to do is put your views to the government department of relevance. And they were quite open to the knowledge that you were able to provide. So I do think at this stage, because Kitty and I actually, and a number of other representatives from our group, we went to see the Northern Metropolis office. And I think this is an opening for all of us for better projects, because there's a lot that will happen there. And for all the discussions today in Hong Kong about government not having much money and they want to save money, in the Northern Metropolis with Development Bureau, they still have billions and billions. Right? So what I'm saying is, it's important to kind of get a sense of where the money is, and in development, in certain specific projects and area, the government will still be steadily spending a lot of money. So also, because these projects are starting and will go on for a long time, I think they are excellent for us to step in. We can also step in because the government is much more aware than before that we're moving with the trend. The BSEP, the national priorities, the international push of climate change and biodiversity is very, very much the trendy discussion today. I think the government gets that. And they will be going to these meetings. In fact, you will see higher and higher level officials going to COPs and so on. Because the linkage today of not just professional work here and there, but actually the government is beginning to get that this is also a way that the business community, the investment community wants to go. And it's the first time that they said, oh, well, you know, with BSAP, it's the first time that the business community became a part of our group. So this is a completely new feeling for AFCD. And I see some of you are from the financial sector here, right? The fact that they're here today with us is also new, because investors and lenders are interested in better projects. Right? So what do we do to have better projects? So obviously we need to focus on the project proponent. So CDD, Development Bureau, really important. In fact, a bit more important than EEB and AFCD, right? The issue about the other bits of government is not that they're not important. They will be there in the background, but the collective side, the better project side, it's going to be the project proponent with the money who will effectively be running the project. So our proposal to the Northern Metropolis office is, since you are now putting in place timetable for planning some projects, And why not do something that you haven't done before in Hong Kong, which is even before you have a plan, you're just sort of broadly saying we need to go there, that maybe you can use our group, because our group has everybody in it. It's not that they cannot start with your group. The reason I think our group is rather special is we also have those local experts who are maybe spending their time in some bit of the new territories. They know the local environment really, really well. So we also have the TNCs, the WWF, and so on, right? But this kind of way of having everybody there, including some expertise on very, very special things, if using our group as a non-profit platform, we could perhaps help government to look at projects on the broadest possible basis. We think maybe we can kind of flush out a lot of stuff at the kind of macro level, but also maybe at a very minute level. It's just to give them a very, very long list of things that they could think about. And of course, the professional organizations always very welcome to partner, so this is like your earliest opportunity to influence how they think about putting a project together. Because once they have a project together, the normal process will continue. They'll get designers, they'll get consultants, and so on. The other thing is, actually, I've been working very closely with Eddie Jie of Gammon. And we are going around trying to say to both government and other project proponents in the private sector that they can get something for nothing, meaning a freebie. Because very often, if you're not asked by your project proponent to do certain things, you don't do it. And sometimes you wish you could, because you see opportunities to save time, save money, actually do a better job. But they haven't asked you to do it, and somehow, it's hard to offer it to them. So one of the things I think we can train both the government and the private sector project proponent is ask them to ask us, ask them to ask the consultant, ask them to ask for certain results. So we can include and pack all these other things that they could have if they asked for it. And is it necessarily going to be a lot more expensive? Well, no. So what Eddie and I are doing right now is, I think he's still up in Suzhou. We've got him to go to present to UN bodies about this kind of idea. And just imagine this kind, even the poorest economy. And at one stage, we were talking to an official from Bangladesh. Even the poorest economy have some money to do infrastructure projects, right? But how they ask for it, what they put into it, becomes a freebie if they ask for it. If they don't ask for it, maybe they won't get it. So as I said, my first point is collaboration, how to collaborate. My second point is freebies. Ask for it in your project design. Train your project proponent. So my last point is the education part. 2 days ago, I was at an occasion over lunch where I had the head of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority talk about, his insights in terms of where Hong Kong is and where he thinks the future is for banking, right, for finance. And he was very good. He talked about, here's the opportunities that I see, here are some of the challenges, and here's the business that I think will come to Hong Kong. So you come away, kind of thinking, right, how do we capture those opportunities? And he talks about, continuous training from universities, people in finance, and, all of that. I don't think I've ever heard someone kind of in some higher authority actually say something like, you know, we have a lot of projects, we've heard that, right? We're going to spend billions. And here's the manpower that we need. I mean, they might say we need a lot of engineers, but they're not saying, well, actually, we're going to do all this stuff, right? And Hong Kong will also be serving the neighboring economy, because your work is not just rooted in Hong Kong, right? What do we need? We need biologists, ecologists, and so on. We want our universities, right, to be training these people. Nobody's ever said that. And talking to some of the people in our group who are at universities, they very often say, well, you know, it's kind of hard for me to persuade people to do PhDs and so on, because they don't know if there are jobs. But I think there are jobs. There are going to be jobs. It's just that maybe we haven't quite, again, trained ourselves to tell the younger generation that there is life going into this kind of specialty. There's been years of moan and groan from people who are in nature conservation that they're not even the poor sisters, they're the even poorer cousins in this whole realm of the built environment. So I think let's try to see how to change that. And maybe HKILA is very good, right, in the sense that you are the professional bodies, whereas somehow we're kind of seen as two NGOs, and NGOs can never be well paid and so on. So what I'm saying is we need to get past that to say to our people, this kind of stuff, right? I mean, at HKUST, I'm often telling young people there is a future to climate science, right? And how do I tell them, right? So anyway, if you're interested, I can share it with you. But in the nature conservation part, I think we need to assure young people that there are jobs, and they're good and very worthwhile jobs. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Professor Low. So now we'll have a Q&A session. So just feel free to discuss and ask questions if you have, and our colleague will pass the mic to you. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sandy here. Hi. Thank you very much, not just for your presentations today, but for all the incredible work that you've been doing over the years, which is greatly appreciated. I just wanted to say a couple of things that arose from some events that I've attended on this topic recently. One is that it's important that everybody make some submission under their own name. I think the number of submissions is so important. We can make suggestions here, and the HKILA can make a consolidated submission, but for each of us to make our own individual submissions is so important. Secondly, the chief executive has just asked for input to his policy address. Now, when we are giving our inputs to AFCD on the Hong Kong BSAP, they can do a certain amount, they can incorporate comments to that extent. But in terms of policy, mainstreaming it within all of the other government departments, getting the priority in the budget to AFCD, who have a minute budget in the overall scheme of things, that's more of a major policy decision. So if we also make comments to the chief executive to create the budgets to enable all of these proposals to happen, we can't do that. We can't get that result just by submitting to AFCD. So that's a couple of points I just wish to make.
I completely agree.
Benny. Actually, Christine, I want to pick up a discussion on Tuesday, also in this room, when it were the TNC and Civic exchange seminar. So I think in that discussion, we mentioned about that it's not that the government doesn't have good guidelines and issues, they have it, but it seems like it's like a stir fry, and there's no major policy initiative. And looking at the visa, which is initiated by AFCD, it seems like when you're reading that, it's basically everything in the countryside part, the rural integration stuff. They put a little bit about NM and mainstreaming in urban biodiversity, but when it goes to the national plan, it specifically mentioned about item 18, if I remember it correctly. It's about urban biodiversity. So the question I was asking you is that, which didn't discuss on Tuesday, is that if on a policy level, how would you imagine would be the best scenario we could have, or we can imagine to have in order to have really nature-based solution or urban biodiversity in Hong Kong?
I'm glad you asked me this question again because got some new insights since since Tuesday. Because actually we went to see the Northern Metropolis office, and one part of our discussion was the fragmentation of a lot of, you could say, professional efforts by different departments. But because they are fragmented professional bits and pieces, like their practice notes and so on, they're not seen as policy. So, and actually, the office agreed with us. And for those of you who've worked with government for many years on many projects, you're just wondering if we can do it there, why are we not doing it everywhere, right? So I think in the heart of your question is, if we're doing biodiversity, what about urban biodiversity? So the urban biodiversity has come in bits and pieces. And when I mentioned to them, I said, is Hong Kong's urban forestry policy still alive? And now I don't know if you remember that. If we go back to about 2011, 2012, right? They hired someone from Australia, and she created a policy of urban forestry. She left, and that was it, right? Now, actually, the civil servants in the room with us, they didn't kind of remember urban forestry. Now, at that time, I was very sure urban forestry was a policy because there was a person there, and we wrote it into our climate change report, right? I mean, this was the discussion with Development Bureau. But then I realized, even when something is clearly articulated, if it's not lifted to a higher level, actually the fragmentation of our bureaucracy, it can get lost. So I think one of the things that would be very good to impress upon the chief executive is to lift some of these principles that we are clearly all agreed on to be articulated as policy. So it might be that the CE needs to say very clearly that urban forestry, or if they wanted to rename it, right, that this is a policy. And that will mean all the departments with responsibility for urban forestry, right, which will include housing, which will include LSCD, right? Well, I mean, all these departments that have some urban space where they have to grow things, that then they have to follow something because it's policy. So this is a bit of an insight for me, how we get government to refresh their own statements to themselves, rather than leave it with, certain silos within the government. So I think if we all said it, that would also be more influential.
Matthew from Hong Kong U, and I have the same challenge as you of teaching the next generation that this is valuable and important work. Two things come to mind as you were talking. One, it seems to me that biodiversity is a flavour. The government says, biodiversity is a really good thing, and then it gets lost in the detail. if biodiversity was infrastructure, the same as health or transportation or industry, and that it was considered at that level, it was essential infrastructure for the city, then I think we could collaborate all these policy ideas together and really give it a centre, give it a name, give it a front door within government. At the moment, I agree with you entirely. It's scattered, it's disparate, it happens in many different places and very quickly gets lost. The second thought I've always had when talking about this subject is about implementation. I wonder who within your group really is expert in implementing. You have a lot of people who are very good scientists, who have very good ideas, understand the principles, but Hong Kong has a very poor track record in implementing projects. It's got some really good sort of planning structures, the country parks, for instance, but in terms of actually digging and constructing and enhancing on the ground, again, it gets very quickly lost in the detail, or it ends up as an engineering project and they get out the standard specification and it all ends up in a sort of concrete box. I just wonder how we can focus on implementation as a key next step, because I really struggle in my job to actually get anybody in government to hear or to support me in terms of implementing projects.
Maybe, I think in our group, right, we all see a little bit of this big picture. And actually, if we accept that both decarbonization, right, and nature conservation, biodiversity, are really hard to do. And as you say, we are turning ideas and knowledge into something that you implement on the ground. The designing, the engineering, the contracting, I mean, each bit of it is highly knowledge-driven with implementation. I mean, you know better than us. We're not there, but you are partially there, but there are other professional groups, right? I do see that this is probably the first time that all the professional groups are having to deal with biodiversity. You know, the engineers no longer say this is not our thing. They are saying it, and I think your experience at the international level, going to COPs and so on, this is where all the professional groups are going, including the bankers and so on, right? So this is clearly the first time where things are coming together, because decarbonization and nature conservation is the revolution. And getting there means we ourselves have to find the right language, right, the right way, using our expertise to actually work together. And then we need to go to the project proponents and try and persuade them that, okay, you might adjust your process in ways that will actually give you all these freebies, and you can all do better ESG or whatever, right? So it's a new call upon us, which is why I said, okay, better projects. Let's train not only ourselves, but the project proponents, and see how we can combine things in a different way. Because I see the opportunity. That's why I'm excited.
Just try it.
Regarding the infrastructure point, actually we had a long discussion roundtable with the finance sector, and they said because it's difficult to fund NBS project if it's just conservation or biodiversity, blah blah blah. But if we frame it as a climate infrastructure, if we do reforestation, but then actually it will reduce flood risk in future. So it is an infrastructure. Because right now the problem with nature-based solution is it takes time. It takes time for the tree to grow. It takes 10 years, 20 years. But right now, investor, they want quick return. They want to earn money. So if we frame all this NBS stuff as a climate infrastructure, then it will be easier to get funded, right? You have anything to say, HSBC?
Oh, wow. No, I'm not representing the bank today. I'm here in my personal capacity.
Yeah, but I agree to what you said. I think it has to be integrated to Christine's point earlier, have to be integrated to the design. So we are not just financing specific activities, but we are financing a whole project that has cash flow, right? And that element of that, either it's MBS or sustainability element, actually enhance the cash flow of the project.
So, but what's important is most of us don't understand that, right? So this is why we need to work together, and we need to work together. And I think the moment is here because you're always inviting us now, right, to your banking and investment thing, and they're very keen, you know, to have you and others to actually join us. And Hong Kong is kind of small enough, right, in the sense that we can all make new friends. And I think over the last, I'd say 3 years, the professionals have been making friends with the people in finance. And on the financial side, because of, I guess, you know, international and national leadership on putting nature on the table, and our financial regulators have actually been pushing for this as well in Hong Kong, that it's kind of, in a way, pushed us all together. And if you can continue to guide us in the sense of how to pitch certain projects, and it's a great thing. For the first time, somebody is saying maybe we need to look at the whole, you know, of which certain things on their own, maybe you can't justify in financial terms, but as a wider project, then, you know, it could be embedded into it.
If I can also respond to some of these questions, I agree that we have this fragmentation issue in Hong Kong, and in fact was also identified in COP16, also 15, as a conclusion that biodiversity is not something that you can rely on a single department or a unit within government to do the whole thing. So by looking at the past 10 years of what they've been doing in the reports, I think the mainstreaming has a lot more room to do better, because a lot of those things are between AFCD and perhaps ACE, and the general public are not aware of what they've done. And a lot of those projects, if you see the 10 years report from AFCD, they are the kind of things that are like a one-off initiative or a single project. So you have a good project here, you have a good project here, there, but then it's not the entire context. What about the other 90-something% of the projects? What are they like? It's not that. So I have been suggesting that, I don't know how to do it, but I've been suggesting that AFCD would have to, I think, yes, on one hand, you need to raise the level of the policy. Urban forestry is still there, it's in 2030 plus. But at the same time, you also need to go down, is how these things go to the project level, like embed in it. Because, as Christine said, you can have one officer who is really keen in doing something, and he or she knows very well how to do it. But then when it becomes just a name, when it passes to another officer, it may be just a homework, have something about that. Because nobody, I mean, how to define urban forestry? Is it one tree there, one tree there? So that's also why not a single project, but as a whole, how all these ideas can come into guidelines and so on, that is implementable. And when that happens, then it's not about how to get funding. Of course, funding is important, but since they're already going to spend money in these projects anyway, then that would be part of it. The example I show in Malaysia, that's actually a development. That's actually a new district, an NDA, not unlike our northern metropolis. But then they are also very close to the wild wetland area, so they decide to have a buffer zone. And within that buffer zone, they build all this educational and then urban forestry and so on. So that becomes part of the entire investment and not as a single standalone exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, I have two questions, I guess. The first one is actually when it comes to policy advocacy, I heard from another forum just on Friday that actually the government is interested only in two things. One is that how to improve GDP, and second, how to improve employment. So I think, Christine, you mentioned earlier about how we can actually attract talents and build new expertise in the city if the projects in Hong Kong actually have all these standards and requirements that would actually grow these talents, right? And then these professions can actually serve neighboring countries as well. So is it, I mean, I don't know what's the overall kind of pitch that we will talk to the government about this BSAC or this Northern Metropolis. Can we really position it that, you know, if we do this project right, it actually will improve the GDP of the city. And perhaps it's something that we can pitch even to the finance secretary. So not only to specific departments, but really going to the top. So that's one. The second question is, actually I'm not up to date in terms of where are we in the Northern Metropolis development stage. So there's a lot of consultations happening, different workshops, but has the contract actually been mandated? Which companies or organizations are actually going to build that? And have we actually agreed on the parameters that will be measured? So Paul, in your presentation earlier, you talk about CEDD is going to publish the NBS guidance, and then there will be like this planning for the Santin Technopole. Do we know what specific measures will be integrated, you know, like how to monitor and so, because when that exists, then from a financial perspective, we can be the enabler and we can help to ensure accountability because we can then embed that into the financing program. Yeah, thank you.
I think the answer is not yet, which is good, right? And how one does that is, I think, also something that we can talk further, right? About how to influence the process. So this bit about, well, you know, our job today at certain levels of government is more jobs and higher GDP, right? What does this really mean? I think, again, is providing the narrative where government can digest it with whomever they are. So, for example, right, going to COP, the last COP for climate change, the first time that people from FSTB went, first time ever. And why? Because they've been hearing a lot of financial people going, not just business people, but financial people going. So then there's a sense that, you know, we want to keep up. And so I think that's a good thing. So the next time, which is this November, who in government should go to the next COP 30 in Brazil, right? And what can we do? I mean, certainly someone will go, but again, how to get the Hong Kong government, which sort of they want to be part of the global discussion, because they see that other cities are competing on that level, right? So they know they need to compete. So you need to show up. You need to put on a good show. And we need to talk about our projects. And when we talk about our projects in Hong Kong, we need to say these are policies. And you know how government normally talks about their project. It's like a laundry list. Right? They'll say we've done A, B, C, and D, but there's no concept behind it. There's no conceptual narrative discussion. So people just say, oh, you've done 5 things, right? So again, how can we help to stitch it together? Because I think actually many government departments are doing things. And so, you know, this thing about the NBS that I think CEDD is doing, we need to be so encouraging of them. But let us notice why this is happening. It's happening because CEDD, the people in CEDD, recognize that they have to implement projects. And when they implement projects, the world's talking about nature. So they want to write some guidelines, right? This is fantastic, but it's not a government policy, right? It's not at a higher level. So I think what we need to do is to kind of help them, or how can we find the narrative, to tell the financial secretary, it is so necessary that you do that. Please speak at even a higher level because bankers and investors need to hear this. I think that's the kind of narrative that will be even more helpful. Don't tell them it's enough that CEDD has it, right? Because then it's CEDD implementing it when they look at a project. But all government departments, right, should be doing this.
Yes, thank you for all the insights. I'd like to pick up on the point on jobs and finances. I think that's very important. I think for landscape architecture, for our institute, it seems that for me, it seems that we're in somewhat of a schizophrenic moment. We're kind of caught between a lot of optimism and kind of at the larger level, at the global level, but then also we're kind of noticing some pessimism on the ground because of the construction industry is kind of not, kind of the economic downturn, and then the fall in construction jobs on the ground, right? So we have some internal discussion recently about these state of things. But I think in the end, when it's the moment when we're getting a lot of attention on biodiversity, on climate resilience, and a lot of these things which are really the core of the expertise that landscape architects are being trained. So I think the policy level discussion is very important because it allows us to work on these things that we are trained in school, all these different landscape architecture schools in the world, along with other professions. We are spending a lot of effort into working on all these problems that we are discussing and the solutions. But when it gets to the ground level in the government departments or in the real projects, landscape architects in the government are dispersed in all these different departments, and they are only able to work on a very project level, very kind of scattered, right? So there isn't really, without the policy mandate or some kind of concrete measurement on green GDPs or how these infrastructural economic cost and benefits of green and blue infrastructure or nature-based solutions, we can't really turn it into financial sources for projects that can create benefits in terms of GDP and in terms of social larger level benefits that allow all these theoretical things that we have been talking in all landscape architecture conferences or related kind of disciplines, right? We all work together to have a lot of proposals that seems to have a huge, well, maybe bridgeable or not bridgeable gap to implementation. So, for example, I think the Santin Metropolis, Northern Metropolis proposals, that's very encouraging because we are attempting to link the master planning and design brief into implementable projects that that gets into the contracts, right? That take all these important concepts, nature-based solutions, climate resilience, and things like that into the real contracts. So, so I guess my with that kind of long comment.
But I think what you're really saying is what I'm trying to say as
Yes.
well, which is how can we use the existing process in a way where the early design is so critical, right? Because you establish the floor of what it is about, that in a way it's almost like a freebie. I mean, how do you explain to the financial secretary that if he gets it right from the beginning, then actually the rest of it is like a freebie? And that actually concreting everything is never the cheapest option, in the longer term. So I think for people like ourselves in the academic sector or in the sort of nature sector, we think that if we worked closer with the professionals and people in finance, that maybe collectively we can find the right language, right, to answer that sort of questions. because we know it's right. But if we're talking to someone else who are thinking of, well, what I need right now is better GDP, right? How to convince them that they are going to get that.
Yeah, so definitely, I think there should be. I agree. There should be a lot of jobs. We're trying to. Well, I think we should try to get those jobs. You know.
I have a case study to share. So I went to the Institute of Planner and Events, and then they had this Melbourne government official city planner. And then she shared that actually for like even some small projects, because you mentioned fragmentation, they don't know, they can't do much, right, for the project wise. But then actually when they, for example, when they revamp a roundabout, they will think of how to add some trees, add some greenings in this project. So I think going forward, like, don't think that you can't do anything. You can like imagine how to add a little bit of things. So if every little bit of things add up together, it will become the multi-level network landscape approach.
I think the thing is, I think there is a lot of capacity building we need to do, because as a matter of fact, nature or things like NBS, this kind of thing, is very new to many of the project proponents that you mentioned. So that's why Yinlun's kind of concern, frustration, it is real that, okay, we are talking to maybe the director of CEDD, okay, that is, well, not right to the top of the government, but they are the directorate level, they're that level. But how it got filtered down to the working level is another story. Especially when the northern metropolis, they want to move fast. They want to do it fast. So of course they want to do things that they used to do. Otherwise, how can they do fast? If you have these kind of new things coming in, how can they be filtered through? So yeah, I mean that go back to the point that yes, we need higher up in policy that will ensure the kind of continuous support to this. But then at the same time, we need to do the filter down as well. And that can only be done by the kind of collaboration. So what we are trying to do, I think, as professional institute, together with the other professional institute, we are kind of the bridge of, we know what's the status quo. We know where things can go wrong. It can be any level can go wrong. Even if you have a really good master plan, and then, well, you asked about the progress of Northern Metropolis. It's separated into many different regions, like the NDA. And then each NDA, when you got the master plan ready, then it will be very many different contracts. Like one contract on district cooling system and the other contract on site formation. So that's also why it's important that if you have NBS, biodiversity, all these things, it needs to be embedded in the system. So whatever they're doing, they have to observe. So I think 17 years is a good example because they're going to have that design and planning guide, and that's a kind of overriding guide to everything that happened afterwards to 17. Hope that that's the way forward.
We will take 2 more questions from the floor.
Hi, thank you everyone for this very enlightening and important presentation. So I'm looking at your 5 priority areas, and I agree with all of it. It's all great. But, you know, from the scientific perspective, biodiversity conservation is not rocket science. We know how to do it from a scientific perspective, and that's to keep as much large, intact, continuous, healthy habitat as possible. Okay, so and all these actions are complements to that primary strategy. Okay, but what we've also often seen when these types of strategies filter into the planning or filter into the policy making, they are treated as substitutes for keeping intact habitat, right? And we've seen this again and again in Hong Kong, right? So, Hong Kong, the Hong Kong government will establish a marine protected area because it wants to reclaim land for a 3rd runway. You know, it'll do X, Y, and Z because it wants to it wants to degrade habitat somewhere else. Okay, and what we also know from a scientific perspective is that restoration of degraded habitat is an insufficient and often a poor substitute for keeping habitats intact in the first place. Okay, but again and again, that's what we see when we see these sub strategies eventually filter into the policymaking process. You know, let's if we want to fill in a wetland, well, we'll just create another one somewhere else. Let's create large fragmented areas of vegetation, and that will justify us removing a large intact tract of vegetation. Okay, so what are the ideas in place? What are the strategies that we're putting forward in order to prevent that outcome? Thank you.
Maybe I'll go first. I think your your earlier statement that preserving continuous landscape or marine area is important. I don't think that's understood by everyone. So we end up saying creating networks, right? The certain things that are so obvious to you are actually not obvious to other professionals. So this idea of mainstreaming, what are some really key issues, is also very important. And what can we still do, right? You know, in Hong Kong, what do we do? And I mean, this is just a by the way comment. I work with some of the finest climate scientists in Hong Kong. They talk about, okay, what is it that we have to give up because they won't survive? So what is it that we can protect, right? So I mean, this kind of more scientific, professional knowledge, we actually have the capability to have deeper discussions in Hong Kong. So, you know, but let me leave that aside for the time being.
I think, I think that goes also to the way we used to do things for many, many years in land development, in city development, is that they see everything as, you know, you can build this, including the habitats, the landscape. And that's why we have been like suggesting the change of paradigm from the EIA kind of driven development to SEA. So you should understand what you are damaging before you do the works, rather than, okay, we will do it, but we will mitigate or we will compensate somewhere else. And that's already a very big difference in what we're doing. Because especially when things want to go fast, in places like Northern Metropolis, they will do the site formation first. But then, okay, and then after that, you build a park there. Then why do you want to take away all the vegetation and then build a park afterwards? Similarly, some of the fish pond could be there, could stay there. It could be part of the landscape. Why do you need to fill it up and then put another water feature there? That kind of thing. So, but that's a very big change of way that people do things. I mean, with the whole system. So I hope, again, for Northern Metropolis, because this is such a vast scale of development in Hong Kong, we can try different things. And I hope the government is open enough, but what time it allow, to do a kind of change of way of doing things.
I have a quick thought, actually not quick thought, I've been thinking about it for so many years, what you talk about. I completely agree with you. The term, we say balance, conservation and development. It's not working. When you look at all the data, biodiversity, they are disappearing, climate change so badly. So we know balance does not work because money is always important, more important. So I propose a term, integrate conservation and development. So when we develop, conservation has to be in the heart of it. So that's why KMGBF is 23 targets. All targets are important. We cannot just do one or two. So it has to be a holistic way, and government has to understand it. And not just AFCD need to do it. It's every department. Even when you print a paper, you need to think about that.
Can I just introduce one word? Because when I'm teaching students, this notion of balance, everybody nods away, and I say, well, we've come to the stage. What we have to do is bend towards a certain side, right? Kingte, right? And you can show lots of examples of why you need to kingte, because all the reasons that you've talked about. So I think it's also important for us on the public stage, on the policy stage, to introduce new vocabulary, because they'll get it. But we need to depart from some of the words that we used to when we were sounding kind of like bands.
Hi there. We're here from International College Hong Kong, which is a school in the New Territories encompassed by the Northern Metropolis. And so we can see the incredible social and economic potential, but we also know how important a healthy ecosystem is for our students' well-being. I'm just wondering, you mentioned the importance of education. Are there any school-related initiatives that you would recommend that we get involved with? Because I can imagine that would be very empowering for the young students to think about contributing to their own futures.
So actually, Civic Exchange, we published another report, I think 1 month ago, on education. You can have a look on our website. And actually, after publishing the report, this one is off record, can delete afterwards. So we met with EDB, Education Bureau, and they are aware that only 2% of the school development plan mentioned climate change, and 1% mentioned biodiversity. So now they know they have to do something, and then because since we keep pushing nature-based solution, so they want to do something with school in the next year, want to do it with us. So I'm very busy, and but they are thinking of seeing how to make schools a nature-based solution. And if the school has no space, how about the parks next to the school? So yeah, there's definitely something going on here, and then we definitely need more collaboration, because just me or just my team, we only have like a few people. So we need to work together and have more discussion.
One last question.
Thank you. I speak just as a citizen for Hong Kong. Today I hear invaluable information and proposition around the topic. But always what concerns me is we're talking to almost the convergent. How do we mobilize the public, the whole population, to understand the importance and the urgency of what we're talking about? You've repeated twice, every piece of paper we use is important. I practice that vigilantly myself, but I find probably less than 1% of my friends practice it. Every mouthful we take, every time we get in the car, every time we get in the plane to fly somewhere, every building we go creates carbon. But I don't think the public actually gets that message. I'm actually involved in several action groups trying to change government policy or plan approaches to various projects. And the answer very often underlines the resistance to any proposition is that there is not enough public desire to make us change our policy and our government system. So how do we deal with that? Education just in the schools is not going to address the urgency of our problem. It's education of the public.
This is a question that is asked all the time. Maybe I can just share a story with you. Last summer, I had an intern. The intern is a second-year student in university doing sustainability. And she told me, in a way, what you said. She says, well, we're very depressed because, what they study is the world going to pots, right? And she said, I'm she says, me and my friends are all very depressed because we don't know what to do. You know, we clearly care, we're doing it, and we're not sure anything that we can do matters. Now, my internship with her over 2 months was I took her everywhere. I took her to meetings with government officials, with NGOs, and I would take her to an event like this. And over the course of 2 months, she said to me afterwards, she says, I feel much better when I get back to school, because this is what she said to me. She said, I saw in these meetings and conversations and gathering with so many different people, how they talked about what they could do. And she said, I see that many people actually want to do something, and some of them are doing something or trying to do something. And she says, well, I feel that I can keep going as well. So I think that sense. Now, as to others out there, by putting ourselves out there, I think we cause a little bit of energy. Whether something is perceived and acted upon by the public in general, that's really, really hard. Having been someone in frontline politics, I can tell you, you can have something on the equivalent of today's social media, obviously, but you can have something on the front page every day for a week, and the majority of people would not know about it. But it doesn't mean they're totally unconscious, right? So I know the government says, well, I wish more people will speak up, which is why I really appreciated the call to say for the BSEP, just send in even a paragraph of your own thoughts. And, even if you were to say, I really appreciate, the country parks that, we can do that, or I really would like to see more urban forestry because that will make whatever. I think those comments actually really matter for the people in government who are in the front line, because that's the only way they can go to their superior officers and say, last time we had 5,000 people respond. This time I have 15,000 people respond. So think about these little things that we can do. I mean, there's a war going to go on very soon somewhere else. I mean, we all feel completely hopeless, but it doesn't mean we can't, be energetic in our attitude.
If I can have a go at that, I don't have the answer for both of your questions, but again, I think it's kind of the things that we can do to make changes. So in the past few years, I find that the more collaborations we do, the more potential opportunities arise. So that's why when I talk to people in AFCD, they say, oh, I have been talking to this department and that department. I have done a lot of things. Say, don't just do it alone, and don't just do departments. Go outside and talk to other people. We can help organizing things as long as they come, and then things will arise. And about education, there is also an opportunity now because the Development Bureau is saying that they want the professionals, the construction professionals, to chip in something in STEM education. Okay, so STEM education starting from really, really young. And then, so I think for our profession, definitely, biodiversity should be part of STEM or STEAM. So that would be part of the curriculum embedded in that. So that would help the mainstreaming. So actually, this is the little dots and dots that we try to line up together.
If I may say 2 words, do more. For me, I've been working super hard. After meeting Professor Deborah Roberts, I understand 2.643. So just work harder, and then I think when people see you work hard so much, they will join. So yeah, either you can be positive like me, or you just go home and cry. But I think positive is better.
Definitely. I'm just asking whether we should not be thinking more about mobilizing the public and everything. Definitely, I'm not going to give up tomorrow because I'm already in a habit.
I mean, there's no kind of one answer. I think that's the thing. But of course, you're already doing various things.
Yeah, we have to remain positive to make positive change.
thank you, Professor Low, Paul, and Kitty, and thank you everyone for participate in this discussion. So, just before we end, just the last words. Just send an email to bsep@afcd.gov.hk and just tell the government how we all care. Yeah. Yes.
11th of July, last
Yeah,
day.
until
right?
11th
So make
of
sure you
July.
send in something.
And show the government many people care. Yeah. Thank you very much.